VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker, and we are chilling on July 10th, and we are not far away from training camp, so we're going to go through some myths about the 2024 Vikings, or more specifically, myths that surround the team right now. I think we do some semblance of a show like this about false narratives and myths, so we're going to do just that. Today I'm on a solo trip. Those are pretty rare these days. See if I still got it. Pleasure to be back with you guys and gals. I've ranked these, four of them, and we're going to start at the bottom of the list. When we get to number one, that's what I perceive as the top myth in the Vikings orbit right now. So let's begin. The first one, ESPN came out with an analytics-focused list about the teams with the best young talent. And you would think, because these Vikings have J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner and Justin Jefferson, Ivan Pace, they would be well represented on the list. No, they ranked 24th out of 32 teams, which if you count backward from 32, that means the Vikings have the 9th worst young talent in the NFL, and ESPN's criteria was for players that are, when the season starts, are going to be under the age of 25. So the Vikings were not represented very well. 24th isn't very good. And for a team that is in a self-professed competitive rebuild, one would hope that the ranking would be higher than 24th. Well, I believe this is a myth. I'm going to tell you why. So the Vikings can easily scale this ranking set. If J.J. McCarthy or Dallas Turner turn out to be any good, voila, that will fix any standing of the Vikings being in the bottom 10 of the best young cores. And then interestingly, the way that ESPN cut off their criteria at below age 25, well, the Vikings have 4 contributors right at that age or will be at 25 when the season begins. And those are Justin Jefferson, of course, and that's kind of a noteworthy deal. Christian Darrisaw. So the team's 2 best players are right at age 25, which shoved them down ESPN's list. And then Cameron Bynum. And let's see, Mekhi Blackman is also, I believe, 25 on the nose. He was an older rookie last year, or he will be when the season starts. So when you pull up that ESPN list, it's a smart article on the whole, but the Vikings are victim of happenstance in that their 2 best players are right past ESPN's cutoff. And then on top of that, the 2 guys that essentially control the future, J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, the 2 first-rounders from April, they really don't qualify because nobody knows for sure if they're going to be any good. So if you invest in what ESPN is telling you that, hey, this young talent on the Vikings is no good, there are some caveats, and therefore I would consider it a myth. Now, if J.J. McCarthy sucks or Dallas Turner was a big overspend via trade, yes, they'll be onto something, but I don't believe either one of those will be true. So number 4 is any notion that the young talent is flat out mid or not good in general. That was number 4. Number 3 is the idea that Dalton Risner is a shoo-in to start at guard or specifically left guard because that's his jam. I did a poll on Twitter, on X, Vikings Twitter, about a week and a half ago, that asked for everybody's opinion, prediction on who will start at guard. We were chilling in June, and Dalton Risner had come back in May, and out of nowhere, Kevin O'Connell said that there is a camp battle of 2 guard spots between 3 guys in Ed Ingram at right guard, Blake Brandel, who can probably play either one, and then Risner, who's usually at left guard. And we didn't think Ed Ingram was in the mix as a fringe starter or possibly to be RG2. But if O'Connell, without provocation, said there's going to be a camp battle of 3 guys between 2 spots, that's noteworthy. So there is an honest-to-goodness guard battle. And when I put that poll on Twitter, I put all the variations of what could happen at guard. Brandel at right guard, Risner at left guard, Ingram at right guard, Brandel at left guard, all of the combinations. And about 75% of folks believe Risner is going to start. And that'll be great. I'll be happy with that, but I don't think that is a shoo-in, and I don't even think that Risner is the front runner to start. Before I saw his contract, I was like, yeah, that guy is pretty good at pass protection. You want to keep Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy upright. But then you saw his contract come back, and it was 1 year and $2.4 million. That's not a lot for a starting left guard. And in fact, Blake Brandel's contract is beefier, 3 years and $9.5 million. So while Reisner might end up the starter, he might win the training camp and preseason battle. I don't think that fans should just say, hey, it's Reisner at left guard and Ingram or Reisner at left guard and Ingram at right guard. I think that the safer bet, if you had to predict Vikings-Giants week 1, I would think it would be Blake Brandel at left guard and then Ed Ingram stay in his spot at right. So while everybody loves Dalton Reisner, he's beloved by Vikings fans, he might encounter the same fate that he did last year, wherein he sits on the bench until something happens to one of the guards, and then Reisner enters the mix. So when I saw that poll result, 75% or so that thought Reisner is going to start, I was like, how can we dial this back a little bit? I don't want folks to be disappointed when he isn't the starter. So certainly not a shoe-in, and I believe that is the third myth right now, or second on the list, that Reisner is just solidified as a starter. Nope, that's a camp battle that's on the way. All right, number 2 is any notion that J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold are going to embark on an honest-to-goodness QB1 competition. Regrettably, I don't think that is the Vikings' plans whatsoever. In that same, I think it was same interview, but the same week as the Kevin O'Connell quote about the guard battle, again, without really being provoked, he said that he considered Sam Darnold the QB1. He said, we don't really officially have a depth chart right now, but Sam's our guy. So since the draft, especially the rah-rah of, getting a new quarterback and all that, we've kind of hoped or assumed there would be a McCarthy or Darnold battle, but I don't think that is the case. I think it is flat out Sam Darnold's job, at least out of the gate in 2024. And then if McCarthy, does sweet things sometime behind the scenes during the season and the Vikings record is underwhelming, yeah, of course he'd take over. But I would actually be shocked if McCarthy did enough this summer on his benchmark checklist to win the QB1 job. So this guy is operating under the pretense, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Sam Darnold is the QB1 against the Giants on September 8th. And if you believe Paul Allen, who's been on the show before, sad to say it, J.J. McCarthy might be fighting for QB2 with Nick Mullins. Right after the draft, we were all about, hey, McCarthy, will he have the juice to upseed Sam Darnold and win the job like C.J. Stroud last year? Well, McCarthy just turned 21 in January. I think the coaching staff really enjoys Sam Darnold. They're going to give him a fair shake at this offense. So the camp battle that we've thought about, speculated about, I don't even think it's going to be a thing. And if there's going to be a camp battle, it's going to be McCarthy versus Mullins. My dog's chewing on something. Give me just a second. If you're going to make your 53-man roster projections or to project the starting offense, put Sam Darnold in there at QB1. I don't see any scenario where McCarthy goes out of the gate. I mean, there could be a thing where, hey, he looks like garbage against the Giants, and then week 2, is it the Texans or the Niners? They're 0-2 right away. Then, yeah, hey, if McCarthy was just about ready in the summer, then he could take over. But I don't want there to be, here in a couple weeks and training camp starts, I don't want fans to think that it's McCarthy versus Darnold. I think it is Darnold for sure, and then McCarthy versus Mullins for QB2. And let's hope McCarthy has the oomph to win QB2, because it would be moderately depressing if McCarthy ends up at QB3. So that's the third one. And here's the top one at the moment. This one has been proliferated pretty much since we started to realize Kirk Cousins was going to leave the team. There is this notion from Vikings fans, I've seen it ad nauseum, that says, wait until 2025 when we have over $100 million in cap space. And when we started saying that, I didn't know where people were getting that number. I think what they were doing was going to overthecap.com in January and February, sorting by 2025, and then it would say, hey, the Vikings have $108 million or something like that. That was never going to stay that way. Before free agency this year, before signing Justin Jefferson, And then Darisaw will eventually be extended, and then his money will kick in 2026? But the myth here is that the Vikings are going to have over $100 million in cap space. No, that's not true at all. Unless they start backloading existing contracts and pushing money into 2026 and 2027, I guess there would be a path to find $100 million bucks. But more realistically, as it stands right now, it might even diminish heading into next March. The Vikings have $54 million in cap space, which is about half of this conjured, juicy $100 million in cap space number. Now, the positive spin on this is that is about the 8th or 9th most in the NFL heading into next offseason. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is going to have a bunch of money to spend on free agents, but it ain't going to be no 100 million or over 100 million bucks. And that, if you believe that, that kind of sucks because the draft capital is basically wiped out next year via the Dallas Turner trade. Right now, the Vikings have a first, probably a third from the compensatory pick of Cousins, and 2/5. And we'll talk about this for the next, 10 months. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah will probably trade back and find a way to get a bunch of those picks back. But because the draft capital piggy bank is really barren, we've rested on this notion that, hey, we're going to have $100 million in cap space, so we can just go sign all free agents and screw those picks. You can sign a lot of free agents, but it's going to be to the tune of about $54 million bucks, not $108, $110 million. It was just never true to begin with because Jefferson's big money will kick in 2025. Jonathan Grenard was signed for a handsome deal. His contract is still on the books in 2025. So we had a whole free agency period plus Jefferson's extension that knocked down that weird $100 million figure that we have just said, without really any real evidence for quite some time. So those are the myths. The fourth is that the young talent is underwhelming or, according to ESPN, ranks 24th in the NFL. That adds some caveats. Number 3 is Dalton Reisner as a shoe-in starter. I don't think we should be thinking that way. You should be thinking it as a camp battle between Reisner, Brandel, and Ingram. Number 2 is the idea that we're going to have a QB1 battle. Unfortunately not. I believe it's Sam Darnold's job no matter what. And then we'll just see what McCarthy does in the summer for vibes and hopefully on a positive trajectory otherwise. And then the biggest one, I think hopefully will be dead soon, is that the Vikings have $100 million or over $100 million in cap space next year. No, it's really rare that a team would go into free agency with that amount of money. And they had to pay guys this offseason, which has already knocked that figure down. All right, hope you enjoyed Wednesday's show. We'll talk to you soon. Skol, baby.